Okay, I'm going video 2, and what I want to do is talk about signal flow through a console, because the reason why I want to talk about this as far as signal flow, because this works the same way in your DAW for the most part, and it really depends on the DAW that you're using, what options they give you with your mixer. And it also works the same way with digital mixers, in a sense, because everything was basically designed to function like an analog console, even in the digital world, except in the digital world or the DAW world, most of the time you have to tell the mixer what to do. Unlike an analog console where everything is, you just have to physically, manually reroute what you want it to do. In a digital mixer, you got to literally tell it what to do by pushing buttons and functions to get it to do it. So the signal flow is on the back of consoles. There are usually per channel, they usually are going to have a line input, a mic input, a direct out, and usually an insert connection. So with that being said, we'll look at the back, and the input sections for channels are always going to be different than the output section for the master output section. I'm gonna kind of put some light and come behind the console of this one. And most mixers work this way, some don't. Some don't have direct out, some don't have sends and returns out. Some just have a mic and a line, some just have a line, some have just a mic. But for the purpose of this video, we're going to talk about what's generally on a channel input. So you're going to have, for the back, per channel, an XRL, which is going to be this one right here. That's going to be a mic line input, or what we call an XLR, signal left and right balanced. And then there is a line input, which is a balanced, what they call TRS, tip, ring, and sleeve input. Then there's an insert right here. Then there's a direct out. And that's usually common, like on this particular channel right here. Same thing. You have some mic inputs, line inputs, some inserts, and some direct outs. And then your master output section I'll talk about differently, and I'll talk about that a little bit later, because the master outputs. So just remember, consoles are typically input and output routing, but they are basically channels of microphone. For example, most consoles are mostly microphone inputs with microphone preamps in them, with the option to also have equalizers on most mixers. And then you have your ability to auxiliary route. So how does it flow? What's going to happen is, you got, for this one, this is 48 channels. You got 24 on one side of the master output section, which is this section. This is all the output sections. And then you got another 24 channels on the other side. Some mixers might only have 24 channels, and then they might have a bus and a master. They might stop here. So it just depends on how many channels of the mixer type that you buy or get, if you get a console. But the concept is the same. The signal flow flows the same. So basically, the signal is going to come into the input section, which is usually the preamp section. It's got to come into the preamp section. Some consoles, the preamp section will be up top, and then they might have the bus routing, like these switches here are bus assignments to send that channel to a bus group right here. They may be above the preamp. Some are down by the fader. It just depends on the console. Other than that, they give you the preamp section, which usually give you an option to apply 48 volt power for a microphone, a polarity or phase switching Usually to switch it between line and phase, between a line or mic, line or mic. Then you usually have the gain input control volume for the gain input that's coming into that preamp. Then some consoles will give you at least a high pass filter. Some of them will give you high pass and low pass filtering. I'll talk about EQ and filtering in another video, but they'll give you that option. And then they'll at least give you an option to give you some equalization. Like this one has a high, it's a fixed high at 12K, a sweepable high mid, a sweepable mid high, a sweepable mid low, and a low fixed low. Usually these are shelved. There's a difference between notch, bandwidth, and shelving. I'll talk about EQ in a different video. Other than that, then after it comes to the preamp and an option to engage it to go through the EQ, if you engage it, the next part is coming straight to your fader. Some consoles have dual faders, so you can input and switch between the small faders and big faders. And then some consoles don't have a big fader. They don't. So the next section after it comes through the EQ section, and the preamp section and the EQ section, there's also a direct out, allows you to send whatever you got on that channel. You can send directly back out of the console of that same channel. That's why you'll see direct outs on every single channel on certain consoles. That allows you to send whatever you're going to put in that channel. You can direct it out to like a recording source, like a tape machine, a hard disk recorder, ADAT system or whatever, or direct out directly to your audio interface. You can plug it directly from there, so that whatever source is coming on that channel will also go into wherever you want to direct out. If you don't want to come out of a bus output, or you want to come out, usually that's where you're going to direct out to go to your recording source. Next after that is coming to your fader. So this is your master output for that channel. But the thing is, because it's hardwired into the console, it directs out, the signal comes from the preamp section through the EQ section and to the master output fader directly. It automatically outputs if you assign it. Like this has assign it to left and right. And you got also, I have over here a mono output. I use that for subs. But you can engage, once you engage the output to send it out of the channel, left and right, it's coming to the left-right main out. You assign it, it goes to the left and right main out. This is the left and right main out. So you'll assign that channel here. Once you engage it, you can assign it to go to the main route outputs here, and that's where it will go. But if you don't engage it, or engage none of these assignments, you won't hear anything. Even though you can have signal on the channel, you won't have any signal till you route it. So you have to route it by hitting left and right and so forth. You also have the option to mute the channel. So if you don't want, you want to hear the signal, but you just want to mute because you don't want the channel, you can mute it. You also have the option to send it to the left speaker, keep it in the center, or to the right, or anywhere in between. So that's where it's routing. From there, you have what they call a PLF, means pre-fader listen. So when you hit the pre-fader listen, it's gonna listen to the source that you coming into the channel at the preamp section. So you can hear the source before you ever start doing anything by hitting the pre-fader, irregardless of what's going on with the fader here. Hit the pre-fader listen, you can hear what's going on at the preamp section of the channel. Undo it, then then it's going to be depends on your volume level here. Other than that, you have the option with what they call auxiliary sends. These are auxiliaries or alternatives. We call them auxiliaries or alternatives. We might just say sends. You'll probably see that on your DAW as well. A send or an auxiliary or an alternative, it's the same thing. And this one have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you got up to 10 alternate channels you can send this channel out. Now, most of the time when there is auxiliaries, they have what they call pre and post. So pre means before the fader. So if you engage it to pre, irregardless of what's going on with the volume here, irregardless of what's going on here, the volume is going to be at full line level volume, or the full volume level of what's the level that you got coming from the preamp. The full volume is going to come out of that channel and go to that auxiliary out. You're just going to give it how much volume level that you want to give it coming out of that. So if you want the channel to come out of 1 at a certain volume level, you just adjust it. And that will send it to a main auxiliary master control, volume control. And that's 1 or 2 or 3. Like this one has 10, except 9 and 10 are shared. So it's a stereo pair. So you can go 9 or 10, or if you keep it in the center, send it to 9 and 10. 1 through 8 are independent. So because of that, on this one is 1 through 8. Not all consoles have 10. Some only have 2, some have 4, some have 6, some have 8, some have 10, some have, it just depends on the console. So you have that, you have the option to go pre and post. Now, a lot of times you'll pre, so that because you don't want the alternate or auxiliary channel, you don't want your fader affecting the auxiliary signal that you're going to send it to. So you put the pre. But sometimes there's some in situations where you need the main volume to affect even the auxiliary output. So you leave it up and leave it in post. So when you bring the main fader down, you'll send the volume down to those auxiliaries as well. But if you don't want, if you want to work independently of each other, you put it on pre. And that's what you want to do. Other than that, other than your typical mute, solo, pre-fader listen, panning and all that, you have the fader volume controlling the output of that channel. And then you have assignments. And I can assign these channels to, and I can send this to, if I want to send this channel to a bus. So if I have all, let's for example, if I have all 8 of these, and these are all my drums, I might want all my drums to be affected by 1 compressor. So I might want to send all these drums to a particular compressor, but I can't put a compressor on each individual channel if I have 1 compressor. So I'm going to put it on a group. Like for example, groups 1 and 2, I might have them as a stereo pair on groups 1 and 2. So I hit 1 and 2 here, and now that sound is going to come to 1 and 2, and that's what's going to affect. Matter of fact, while I'm thinking about it, let me turn it on so you can see signal. So I'm just going to turn some stuff on here. Why not? So I'm just going to turn. So I'm going to turn. Let me turn. Okay, the mixer on. Okay. Turn the speakers on. Oh, so now the board is on. So now I'm going to turn on the outboard gear so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So, all right. So we're gonna. Why not? All right. So when you sign it to a bus group, then it and you also can have the ability to mute those channels as well as a whole instead of just individual mutes. You can sign it so one master mute can control how many channels you want. Some consoles have that. So everything flows input, and because it's hardwired to the console, there's no output. When you look at the on the back, you'll just see a line input, a mic input, a direct out, and an insert. The insert allows you to insert various amounts of gear on that channel. For most people will just route it using a patch bay system like this. That's a patch bay system that you can assign your routing to. You just patch in, because every piece of gear I got in these racks, the inputs and outputs are going to that patch bay. So That's how it's set up. So if I wanted to, for example, I have channels 1 through 24 is the output. I'm going to, from my audio interface. My audio interface is the antelope, and I'm going to turn it on. So that's the antelope audio interface. So that's going, that all the outputs are coming to the patch bay, which then comes out of the patch bay into my channels here. The inputs that will come from all my gear are coming on channels 25 through 32 here. So if I was to play a drum beat, I'm gonna start a drum beat here. I'm just gonna play a drum beat. And okay. So I got just a generic drum beat going. Okay, and right now I got a compressor inserted, this compressor here. So right now everything's coming, for example, on channels 31 and 32, what's coming from the keyboards over there are coming into channels 31 and 32 via my patch bay over there. So when I unmute it, I turn the mutes off. I'm going to unmute these. Now I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to undo, I'm going to unassign it. So it's not assigned. So when I unmute my bus assignments and all that, I have the option to route how I want to route. For example, I can bring the faders up, even though there's signal here on this channel. You can see the lights, there's signal. You're not going to hear anything coming out of the channel until you assign it. So if I want to hear, so right now it's coming through the preamp section here. I have the option to engage the EQ if I wanted to. You use the EQ. I don't have it engaged. Now it's coming directly to the fader. I have the 31 pan to the left and 31 pan to the right to create a stereo effect. And then from there, I need to assign it. So I'm going to assign it, instead of assigning it to the master output, I'm going to assign it to a bus group. So I'm going to assign it to bus groups. Let's say, for example, I'll assign it to bus groups 7 and 8. So I assigned it to bus at 8 now. So now it's going to go to bus groups 7 and 8. So all I got to do now is bring bus groups 7 and 8 up. Now it's coming to the bus groups. And I'm going to turn the bus groups off up here. So now it's coming to bus groups 7 and 8 here. But I still don't have it because I don't have it assigned to the master output yet. So I just got to assign it from my bus groups. If I want to do that, assign it to my bus groups. Now I got my bus groups. So if I want to insert a piece of gear, something like that, on my bus groups, it'll affect the bus groups. And I can see I got volume level according to my VU meters here. So now, from there, I'm going to assign, I can send it out of the bus group coming out of the console, or I can send it to the master output and then it'll come out. So I'm going to assign it. Now now it's coming from the bus group to my master. And then my master, and then from there, I can, so now my master output, I'm gonna mute those channels. So now my master output, I can send from my master output back into my interface to record how I'm going to mix on the console. And that is typical routing. Now, for example, because this board has a matrix, I can assign this to a matrix if I wanted to. So if I wanted to have matrix, I can sit and let, for example, matrix 1 and 2 that's coming on my bus assignments. If I can come over here and let's say matrix 1 and 2. If I want that to come out of the matrix, I just turn the matrix outputs out and it'll come out my matrix to come out as an output as well. So that's the typical, but let's say I don't want to do it that way. So let me meet this again. Let's say I don't want it to go to a bus group. I just want to go directly to the master output. Instead of sending the bus group, I can untake it out of bus group and I can send this, let me unmute it because I have the channel still unassigned because I took it off of bus groups 1 and 8. Here, I can assign it just directly to the left and the right output to my master. And now it's going directly just to the master. And you can do that too. Now, I'm going to, let's say for the fact, I'm going to, excuse my camera angle while I make an adjustment. Excuse my camera angle. I'm going to come over here and now let's say I want to use an effect processor, right? I want to use an effect processor. So because I have my effect processors, I got those patched in. On that particular, I might want to send an auxiliary out. That's what you would use for either Q mixes to send to headphones or to auxiliary processing units like delays, reverbs. So I'm going to give this some volume. Now you probably hear reverb. So what's happening is I'm going to turn down my master. So now I'm going to send the master, I'm going to send, since my reverb units on that I'm going to use, let's use 1. So my reverb, which is that top one here, is coming on, it's wired, it's patched into 1. So I'm just going to, send it, I'm going to give it some volume to come out of 1. And then I'm going to turn the master volume to send to my reverb unit. But I would have to patch it in. I forgot I don't have it patched in, so I'm gonna go back to 4. So let's go to 4. So I'm at 4. I'm going to send to 4 master. So now I got reverb. So that's one way, that's how you would use your auxiliaries for your auxiliaries. So you can auxiliary it out and then return it back to the board on an auxiliary channel. Okay, so I'm going to stop this. I'll explain patch bays again. I did a video on patch bays, but I'll explain it again why it's wired that way instead of just directly to the board. Now, to end the video, the only really difference, the only real difference between doing something on a console like this and your DAW is, you have to set your DAW up. That's really what you have to do. Let me get some light in here because this curtain making kind of dark in here. Okay, so that's really the significant difference is you have to literally your DAW builds your mixing console as you build your recording tracks. So when you build your recording tracks, it builds the mixer. But what it usually don't build is bus groups and auxiliaries. You have to literally go in your DAW and build those too. And when you do that, your DAW's mixer will react like a real console. All of them are pretty much programmed to work like that. The difference is you have to literally do it. When you know how to do that, when you make up your auxiliaries and your bus groups and all that in your DAW, you will start to hear it's starting to sound like how it's done on an actual console. And that can be the difference between how your mixes are going to come out. So keep that in mind, understanding the routing. Routing of channels are inputs, and then the master is the output. Not all consoles have matrices, but just saying they all do have outputs. And the direct outs are usually just to go directly to a recording source for the most part. But you can use them direct out as a direct out to headphones. But most people are going to use auxiliaries outputs to go to headphones because they can control the volume level that way. A direct out you can, it's just going directly out. Some consoles you can control the volume direct out by hitting direct out and then using a small fader, but this one doesn't have that. It just depends on the console what it can do. Other than that, the console is going to have inserts that you can put a piece of gear on that channel, or you can sound it to a bus group or the master for inserts. Inserts are just basically like they sound. Insert, and a lot of times we'll call them sends or returns as well. Insert, return, sends, and returns, but for the most part, sends as itself is usually sends or auxiliaries or alternative channels. Then you got bus groups, bus or group. But that's the basics of signal routing on a console. Next video, I'm going to talk about how stuff is hooked up on the back of the console. I'm going to talk about how everything's actually literally hooked up. So that's going to be this. So this part 2, the part 3. Then I'll talk about signal flow as far as how a studio's the signal in an actual the whole entire signal flow, like from a live room and a control room. But I just want to talk about the signal flow in the console. So thanks for watching. We're going to video 3.